Let's talk about all the legal aspects here. With me, CNN legal analyst Shan Wu and Ann Milgram. Good morning to you guys. And Ann, let me begin with you. So according to the president this morning, Michael Cohen's admitted crimes, felonies, weren't crimes.
Well, first of all, there's no question they're crimes. No federal judge would take a guilty plea unless they were pleading guilty to a crime. No prosecutor would prosecute these cases. But the bottom line is that we all know that they are crimes. There's no question here that there are campaign finance violations. And what makes these campaign finance violations very clear is that Cohen is saying that the president intended to do this to protect himself in the political campaign. That's what matters here. And so for the president to say there's nothing wrong is just, I mean, it's beyond absurd.
Shan, he's talking about and he's downplaying the crime of campaign finance violations, right? But there's actually a bigger crime that Michael Cohen is alleging here in what he said in court, and that's a crime of conspiracy against the president.
That's right. The president is now what we call a unindicted co-conspirator, and it's perfectly clear that it's him and that Cohen was acting at his direction. So he's completely implicated in the crime.
What about Paul Manafort? Your read on the language, Shan, that the president used to describe Paul Manafort in this interview this morning, echoing really what he was tweeting right after.
Yeah, the language is striking, particularly in conjunction with his later talk about flipping. I mean, he's using the language of mafia, mob prosecutions, saying that Manafort didn't break. I mean, it's one thing to express sympathy for, you know, a colleague or someone you've been friends with, but he's basically saying it's a completely unjust prosecution, even though he's been convicted, and clearly a continuing signal that he's trying to dangle the pardon possibility in front of him.
You think a pardon is likely, Ann?
It's hard for me to imagine that we could even be talking about a pardon. And even the language he's using, it is stunning to me that we now have Manafort convicted as a felon of stealing millions of dollars, essentially from the American government, from the American people. And Donald Trump is out there saying, but he's a great guy. And so it is really, it's hard for me to even imagine that we could be talking about a pardon. That said, I think it's possible the president does it.
Let's listen also to the explanation on the payments here, Shan, because the president wants to have it always, not just one way or two ways, always. And the issue is he says such contrasting things on tape. So let's listen first to the Cohen payments to pay off, you know, Stormy Daniels and also Karen McDougal to keep stories of an alleged affair with the president silent. Here's what he said this morning about that.
Did you know about the payments?
Later on, I knew. Later on. But you have to understand, Ainsley, what he did, and they weren't taken out of campaign finance. That's a big thing. That's a much bigger thing. Did they come out of the campaign? They didn't come out of the campaign. They came from me.
Okay. Well, here's what he said on tape with Michael Cohen about arranging a deal to pay $150,000 to keep Karen McDougal's story of an alleged affair with the president, his former Playboy playmate, to keep that silent. Here's the president.
When it comes time for the financing, which will be...
Listen, what financing?
We'll have to pay you. So
Don't pay the cash.
No. I got... No.
What is he trying to do here, Shan?
It's a good question.
It's just all there. It's all right there.
He's trying to deflect as is usual. I mean, I got to say, I think Ann's probably going to agree with this. I mean, he really needs to consult with lawyers before he talks about this stuff. I mean, his deflection makes no sense. He's talking about it wasn't campaign resources. That's not what the crime is here. So it's completely off base with that. And then his statement that he didn't know about it until later or something, I mean, that's sort of clever because the question is, what is the later there? But he obviously is aware of it before it's paid, so I just don't see how this helps him at all, besides opening him up to more false statements where he'd actually get interviewed or testify under oath.
Do you think, Ann, who or what do you think is putting the president in the most jeopardy right now? And by that I mean Cohen and, you know, the very likely possibility of a potentially very consequential plea agreement and cooperation agreement, or Manafort, who also could reach a deal with Mueller seem before his D.C. trial?
I would be skeptical that Manafort will reach a deal. I think it's possible, but he should have done it earlier. It's sort of a strange thing to do at this point. Again, it's possible. The Cohen piece, I think the two biggest issues for the president are Michael Cohen's guilty plea, which directly implicates the president in commission of a crime, and then the ongoing Mueller investigation into questions of whether he conspired with Russia during the election. And so those two things, and of course Manafort is out there as well, so he just has a lot.
Is Cohen's very problematic issue with the truth and credibility going to be a factor, though, that could be helpful to the president?
Sure. I mean, look, the president surrounded himself with people who are not truthful. I mean, the kind of lawyer that would tape someone, the kind of people that would steal millions of dollars from the U.S. government and even steal from the transition and inauguration, right? I mean, the president surrounded himself. He did not surround himself with Mother Teresa. Let's say that. And so the people all have issues. They're all going to be found to have lied and cheat and stolen and to have done so. And look, you have the president of the United States essentially saying, that Paul Manafort was stealing money and doing these things, but everybody in Washington does it, so it's okay. I mean, how is that possible?
But from the drain the swamp president.
Right, from
we'll talk about that, the political side of all of that next. Thank you, Ann. Good to have you. Shan, nice to have you as well.